They left out the thing I'm most proud of, which I'm going to tell you right now. For a brief time, I held the Guinness Book of World Records record for the most yogurt eaten in 1 minute. That is a true story. Before I started, I wanted to say two things. One is that being recognized by your peers is the best kind of recognition, in my view. And Asa, John, Nancy, and Peter, I want to, again, recognize you. We're here because of you. Second thing I wanted to say, though, it's related to the AI stuff that I'm going to be talking about. The world is moving at a very quick pace, and sometimes it can feel like you're being swept along by this torrent. It's just a river, and you feel sometimes like things are happening to you. Today I was on the modern font of wisdom that is Twitter, and I happened on something and I wanted to read it to you. And this is mostly for the young folks in the audience, but I think everybody needs to hear this. Everything around you was made by people that are no smarter than you. And you can change it, you can influence it, you can build your own things that other people can use. The future isn't something that happens to us, it's a thing that we create. And one of the reasons that I was drawn to the entrepreneurial life, I suppose, is that I wanted to create a future that I wanted, not let someone else do it for me. So I'm not going to ask you to dance, but I am going to ask you to do something before I start. What I want you to do is reach out and grab. Now, do this mindfully, which means I want you to think about what you're doing and the feelings that it evokes in you, okay? So, deep breath. Reach out and grab your glass. Pick it up. Notice how that feels. Take a sip. Really feel the experience. Kind of let the feeling, sensations flow over you and put it down. Okay, now I'm going to show you some AI stuff, but before I do that, I want to talk about what you just did. So there's a puzzle that I'm going to talk about which is related to AI, and it's kind of like what's missing from AI, and there's a lot of things. But one of them is what you just experienced. So you, as a person, have the entire world within you in some literal sense. Your mind can understand and appreciate and think about the entire universe around you, potentially. Emily Dickinson puts this better than I could. Your brain is wider than the sky. You have multitudes within you. And that thing that you just did, when you felt like a thing, was your brain thinking about what you are in that context. So this business about like what you feel like when you're a thing is a very interesting thing, and I just wanted to put that out there, and I'm going to come back to this. Okay, now I'm going to show you some AI, and I'm going to do it for kind of two reasons, but before I show you this, I just want to preface this by saying, first of all, nothing you're about to see was generated by a person. The words were generated by GPT, in response to this query. So I wanted to make my life easy. Please, GPT, write me a speech. The sound that you're hearing is a fake voice that I made of my own voice. It's a voice clone. It's not me speaking. And the image is of a co-founder of Sanctuary, and it's also completely and utterly AI generated. So nothing you're about to see had any human intervention in creating whatsoever, except for this prompt. Here goes.
Good evening, distinguished guests, esteemed inductees, colleagues, friends, and families. I'm both honored and humbled to be standing here tonight as your keynote speaker at this prestigious Business Hall of Fame dinner. This evening is a celebration of exemplary leadership. hard-earned achievements, and the relentless pursuit of success that has brought all of us here together. We are in the presence of trailblazers, innovators, and game changers who have not just dreamt, but dared to shape the world of business with their ingenuity, grit, and integrity. Tonight, we acknowledge and pay tribute to their remarkable journeys, their unwavering dedication, and their lasting contributions to the business world. So, whether you are here to honor someone you admire, or to receive the accolades you rightly deserve, or even just to draw inspiration from this remarkable gathering, let us rejoice in the spirit of this occasion. I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you, and I invite you to join me as we embark on an evening filled with insightful tales of perseverance, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. Thank you for your attention, and here's to an unforgettable night.
So, how many of you work from home? If you do, how do I know you're actually you? How do I know you don't have 100 jobs? This took me 5 minutes to do. And the tools are easy to use for anybody. By the way, a reason I used my voice and Suzanne's face was just to show you this wasn't actually like a real recording. So AI is a complicated thing, but its implications are unclear. But at least as of today, I have 2 pieces of advice for you. One is you have to understand this stuff well enough to use it, and these things are easy to use nowadays. It's basically like speaking and typing. There's not really much to it. There's no programming anymore. So you need to be able to understand how to use them and what they are. But the other is you got to put them in context. Now, part of the reason why I asked you to do that glass thing is I'm going to ask you now a question. Do you think the digital thing I just showed you is capable of feeling what you felt when you picked up that glass? Does anybody think that? The answer is clearly no, right? That gap is not just a small thing. It means that the AI systems that we build today are not human-like at all. They're pretend. They're fake. But they're fakes that are getting much better. They're tools right now. Okay, so that's now. Tools, you should learn to use them, like your calculator. But what about 10 years from now? So this guy here is Jeff Hinton. He is a Canadian, at least. And he is, in some sense, the guy who kicked off this deep learning stuff that took us to where we are here a few years later. So he was a staunch advocate of the position that you should try to build brain-like machines, but it was 50 years away. And he recently quit his post at Google because he felt like the systems that they were building were going to surpass people, not in some weird future time, but now. So what does that mean? He thinks that anything you can do can be done better with a machine, like not in some vague science fiction future, but with the types of technology we have now. So his claim is that machines like what I just showed you there, the digital thing, are on the path to being able to feel like you do, first-person experience, sentient, and so on. So in some ways, I agree with them, but there's a big caveat. There's a big difference between being able to do things, like what I just showed you there, like write a speech, and be something like a person. So this conscious experience thing, the thing that it's like to be a person, is not the same thing as being able to do things. So these are things we build. We're building machines that will be able to eventually do anything that you can do. I'm nearly certain of that. There doesn't appear to be any problem with doing that. It's just a matter of when. By the way, just as an aside, things like GPT and these kinds of tools can't actually affect the physical world directly, but robots, of course, can. It's what they're for. So we're, again, leading the world in British Columbia in this new thing, just like we did in quantum computing. Okay, so I kind of made this distinction playing with this notion that AI and capability is not the same as feeling like a person or being a person. They're different. And in the philosophical side of the study of these types of systems, there's a guy named David Chalmers who's quite preeminent. He coined a phrase called the hard problem of consciousness, and this is this thing I'm talking about. Let's say You were the only person in the world who had that thing that you felt when you picked up the glass, and everyone else is just an automaton. So they don't feel the same way you do. They're just what he would call a philosophical zombie, is what he calls this idea. That you can be performative of tasks and appear to have all of the things that surround experience, but you don't. So how do you know? And this is a particularly vexing problem that those of you who've studied philosophy might have come across before in some guise or another. But for me, it's more than just a weird philosophical abstraction. Now, many of you may know or not that I started out my life as a theoretical physicist, and the thing that I was very interested in was quantum mechanics. The history of that field is very interesting, but one of the most striking things about it is that back around the turn of the 20th century, leading physicists, the type of people who are the keepers of the truth, believed that everything that could be known was known. And there was nothing left to do but calculate to the 6th decimal place. Now, that might seem ridiculous nowadays, but back then it was a firmly held belief. And do you know what? They were almost right. There were just a couple weird little things hanging off that weren't quite right. One of them was this obscure thing that you've probably never heard of called the spectrum of blackbody radiation, which is basically when you heat up a thing and you measure the light that's coming off of it, what do you see? The worldview here predicted something that was absolutely wrong, but whatever, it's just one silly thing. How can that matter? When the string started being pulled, the entirety of the worldview of that time unraveled. Not just part of it, the entire thing. And that led to, among other things, nuclear bombs, lasers, semiconductors, networks, etc. All that stuff came from pulling at this one weird thread that you would have thought, that can't possibly matter. But this thing, consciousness, this thing that you feel when you are you, is not only a hanging thread off the entire edifice of science, but it's a hole in science itself. Let me explain. The way science works is you have people, and they look at something, and they agree on what that thing is. And then they go back and they scribble a bunch of equations and say, hey, does this agree with what you saw? And you're like, yeah. So these kids are doing science now. They're looking at something. They're saying, hey, there's a frog down there. Yeah, there's a frog down there. It's green, right? Yeah, it's green. You can't do that even in principle with your own feelings of who you are, because someone else, say two other people, cannot introspect that thing that you do when you are you. When you pick up that thing and you have that feeling of being a thing, no one else can share it with you. So that means we can't do science on it. It's not amenable to the tools of science, and I find this fascinating, because what it means is that our understanding of the way the world works is horribly incomplete. Why does this matter? Every single thing that makes you who you are, and how you feel, and what you do, and what you believe, depends on what is this ineffable essence of you. Call it a soul, for lack of a better term. That thing that is you. Science doesn't know not only what it is, but it doesn't know how to deal with it. And a frustration that I've often had with the academic side of science is that when an academic scientist is shown something so horrible that it reduces their entire worldview into fragments, they don't say, that is the thing I'm going to wake up and solve tomorrow. No, what they do is they ignore it. Just like those guys did back in the beginning of the 20th century. Why should we care about this thing? This is a big one. So, next time you hear somebody say, AI is going to take over the world and AI is just like people, remember, that's just hype. It's not true. AI right now is just performative. Not only is it not like you, we have no scientific tools to make it like you. It's so far away that you don't have to worry about it at all. But the last thing I'm going to show you before I close is one of the systems we build. And I'm not going to answer the question I'm going to ask, but I'm just going to leave it with you. What would it take to convince you that this thing that I'm about to show you shares those feelings that you have.
Hey everybody, on behalf of Sanctuary, I'd like to congratulate Asa, John, Nancy, and Peter on their induction today into the BOBC Business Hall of Fame. Being recognized by your peers in this way is a great honor, and I'm glad I could just be a small part of it. Thank you.
And thank you.